Hey ladies and gents, welcome to my EFL 2 PES gameplay sliders. So obviously you saw the version 1, which was primarily for the Premier League. This is a look at getting the lower divisions just right in terms of the PES gameplay. So like I said, the goal here is to try and bring the PES gameplay to FIFA 22. It's taken me ages to tweak, test, review, repeat until literally I'm in a place where I'm happy with the closest version of FIFA 22 that's very similar to PES 2021. After version 1, I quickly found that the gameplay was too slow, too boring, and just didn't match how PES 2021 plays. That's when I realized I needed to scale it down a bit and make some serious adjustments. So I've now got to a stage where it's as close to PES 2021 as it gets. My test subjects in PES was San Marino against Andorra, whilst in FIFA 22 my test subjects were Carlisle against Crawley Town from England's EFL Division 2. The most noticeable difference between FIFA 22 and PES 2021 for the lesser teams is the distance between the player and the ball during a sprint. The only way to truly replicate this was by applying 35 sprint and 95 acceleration, which is what you're seeing here. Whilst this looks fantastic, when your player has the ball, during the gameplay, players were far too jittery and the defenders would close you down far too quickly. By the time you blinked, they would literally teleport almost into your space and take the ball off you. It took me a little bit more time to then strike the right balance, getting that distance between the player and the ball just right, but avoiding that jolting forward at unrealistic pace from the defenders. So I went back to the drawing board, and after some experimentation I went for 50 speed and 65 acceleration, creating that disconnect between the player and the ball that we see in PES, but avoiding that player twitchiness where defenders zoom in and pinch the ball within a split second. And as you can see from the gameplay that we saw previously to what we're seeing now, it's a far more realistic pace that we're seeing in PES as it is in FIFA. Next up was shot error, and to replicate the lesser teams in PES, I had to take the players' lower shot accuracy into consideration, as I found shots going wildly off target when the shot error slider was set to over 60. To match PES, I then set this to 56. It feels just right, but if I was aiming for realism, then I'd probably go somewhere between 62 and 64, but you'll need to make the halves longer as you're going to miss quite a few chances. The pass error is set to 57, which is far less than the Premier League sliders, and the reason for this is to counterbalance and offset against the lesser pass stats of the EFL 2 Division players. When it came to shot speed, 53 feels just about right for these lesser players in FIFA 22, because 50 and below I find the shots felt far too slow, especially when you perform a finesse shot. Pass speed, which certainly needs a review from my V1 sliders, as passing in PES is surprisingly quick even for the weaker teams, but the default in FIFA is still lightning speed. So I took this down 5 pegs, down to 45, and it feels just right, as you can see by this side-by-side comparison. I also increased the goalkeeper ability because once again, goalies in PES are far too good on the higher difficulty levels, even with weaker teams. If you're aiming for realism, I'd say leave this at 50 in FIFA because that feels just right from a realism perspective. When it comes to marking in PES, the marking is a bit more lax with the weaker teams, and 60 seems just about right. I've set the run frequency to 64 as PES players do like to get forward in numbers quickly and support the forward players, especially from midfield unless they have that orchestrator role, but this can be adapted for each player in the individual player tactics in FIFA. Next I'm going to talk about the line height, width and length, and somehow the combination I've chosen actually got my defence midfielders into the correct position, protecting the defence as they do in PES, which is a huge complaint in the FIFA community. The line height I've gone for is 48. This will differ depending on the team formation and tactics, but in PES teams do like to sit deep quite often on the default tactics. The line length I've gone for is 54, as the gaps between defence, midfield and the forward line are far too small in FIFA. 54 expands this really nicely to look similar to the spacing in PES, as players are nicely spread out. I set the line width to 63 as players sit far too narrow in FIFA generally without hug the touchline in PES. So thankfully FIFA has the ability to hug the touchline with wide players at just the press of a button using the D-pad. Fullback positioning feels just right at 52 on the slider. Not constantly overlapping the wide players unless instructed to do so by sending them on a dynamic player run. Any higher and the wide players and fullbacks can either occupy the same place or they bomb forward, leaving you defensively exposed as if you had attacking fullbacks enabled in PES. Or any higher than that and they become literally left or right wing forward players if maxed out, which obviously you don't want. First touch control error, I've set this to 100 again. This helps slow the pace of the game down as players take horrendous touches in these lower divisions, like they do when I was playing with San Marino and Andorra. Honestly, that disconnect between player and ball is huge in PES. Make sure to set the game speed to slow in the game settings menu, and the agile dribbling is turned off in the controller settings menu. Here are just a list of the sliders that we're talking about, and these are identical between the user and the CPU. Anyway, that is all from me, ladies and gents. Enjoy looking at these sliders as I fade out now, but thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoy these sliders. It's going to be great to hear your feedback about the gameplay you're seeing on screen, as well as giving these a try yourself in FIFA 22 in the division of EFL 2. I suspect I'll have to make separate sliders for the EFL Division 1 and the Sky Bet Championship as well, but again, I just simply want to apologise. It took ages to piece this together, but I think at the end the result is going to be worth it, and I can't wait to try these in my career mode. Anyway, like I said, that's all from me. Thank you so much for joining me, and take care. Bye bye.
This is a message for Owen Kennedy. Owen, happy birthday from your friend Jonathan Fish. Goal for Colorado United, number 11.